Hello and welcome to Religion and Life. I'm your host, Ozzie Ostwald. Art. Sometimes art is referred to as the handmaiden of religion, used to express religious belief and faith. I prefer to think of spirituality as the handmaiden of art, art becoming a force giving rise to spiritual experience. And while not all art is religious, there has existed a long-standing relationship between religious experience and art. My guest today, Noyes Capehart, is an artist and a writer whose art reveals and challenges the human spirit. Thank you, Noyes, for joining me today.
Thanks for that.
It's an honor and a pleasure to have you here.
It's my pleasure.
I have long enjoyed your art, and I want you to tell our audience who Noyes Capehart is. I mean, artist, writer, philosopher, teacher,
hardly.
University administrator. Just introduce yourself.
Well, I've been at Appalachian. I was here for 28 years, from 69 until my retirement in 90. What year was that? 97, I believe.
Yeah.
And then prior to here, I had taught at the University of Mississippi for 2 years, at the University of Missouri, where I got my graduate degree. Taught there for 4 years. I taught a year and a half at Auburn, my alma mater. So all of those were my back pages. And then I came here and it was in the art department. And I probably shouldn't say this, but foolishly, I entered administration. And I was the assistant dean of fine and applied arts for 2 or 3 years, and then acting dean of the college for a couple of years, which, looking back on those, are my wasted years creatively.
Administration takes a different mindset.
Oh, it just took a honk out. Yeah.
Well, you were a good leader. You might not have been as creative during that time, but you were using your skills in other ways.
Yeah, well,
so appreciate your service to the university.
Well, I've enjoyed this university.
Yeah. How would you describe your art? We were talking a little bit earlier about the process of creating art, but if you had to describe what you're doing when you're creating visual art in particular, does it have a name?
Well, not like realism or impressionism or something like that. I would say that my art is at the base of it is expressive. Mm-hmm. That emotion is far more important to me than description. As I've indicated to others, it's less about what I see. I care less about what I see than what I feel about what I see. Mm. And I draw on my experiences, and they're varied. Some good and some not so good. But both in the writing and the picture making, I'm kind of looking in. I don't know.
I think it's really profound when you say that you're more in touch with your feelings rather than what you're seeing, even while you're producing something to be viewed, a visual work.
Yeah.
And that to me is really an insight into the process and into what you're doing. Now, I've got an image here, this first image I want to take a look at, because I do want to talk about a particular series of artwork that you did that is religious in content, but much of your art is not religious or spiritual,
no.
Explicitly anyway. Mm-hmm. And if we can get this first image up here, we'll take a look at it and talk about it. This is one, I think it's entitled Reality. But this one just struck me, and in part because of the saying you attached to the bottom there, and I can't read it, but it says, to paraphrase it, and you can help me, reality is not what is past or even what is, but what could be.
What could be, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You have anything to say that, or does that say it all?
Well, I guess the reason I got on that track I've done a couple of paintings of this man, the painter, in different contexts. And this one, painting the woman in the hat in close proximity to the easel, I was looking at it one day and thought, you know, what if I take the hand out from under his sleeve and put it over the sleeve?
Yeah.
Let the hand become part of him. Now, it's not a logical situation, and neither is a boy standing on a sled.
That's right.
Neither is an empty box of paint. I mean, I love contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
I love opposition, differences. I wouldn't say surrealism per se, but I do enjoy playing with the dynamics of image relationship.
Right. Yeah. What immediately struck me about this was the hand of the subject of the art there, laying her hand on the arm of the artist. That's what could be.
I guess it is. I guess it is.
Reality's all about perception. Well, you mentioned too, you're not just an artist, although you're probably more well known for your visual art than your writing, but you're a pretty prolific writer, and your fiction sometimes prominently features art. I think some of your characters are art professors.
I think of the 4 books that I have published, all of them are about art in one way or another. And not how to do art. It's the subject of art.
Right.
Art forgery, for one. Artists come into the story, and they're part of the story. The book I did on Devil's Mark is a university professor going on a kind of sabbatical to Rome and Florence. And, you know, he's doing work on Michelangelo. And so somewhere in the book, maybe 2/3 of the way through the book, and here again, it's a little bit like the picture. I thought, well, wait a minute, what if we just jump in time here, and let's spend a little time with Michelangelo. And there's a missing diary in the story, and he plays a prominent role in that, and the diary becomes part of the closing of the book. So I'm mixing my drinks here.
Right. Oh, you also you address topics like murder and assassination.
Oh, yeah.
Where's all that dark stuff come from?
Well, I don't know that I should reveal that.
Oh, maybe you should.
I don't know. It's just I'm blessed. I feel blessed, really, with. I was not blessed with height. We talked about that a little while ago. But I think I was blessed and am blessed with imagination. I live in that world. I mean, I do things in the real world, but I'm kind of always in a picture or always on a page.
There you go. Well,
You know.
well, that's part of what keeps you young.
Well, yeah.
Well, there's another particular series of woodcuts that you do that I'm really interested in, and I was fortunate enough to hear you give a presentation yesterday at the Church of the Holy Cross in Valley Cruces, where these woodcuts reside, and they represent the Stations of the Cross.
They do.
14 original woodcuts representing the Way of Sorrows, which is the Via Dolorosa that many Christians know about. But many Christians don't know about it. So if you could maybe just, before we talk about the particular art you produced, what is the Via Dolorosa and what are the Stations of the Cross?
Well, okay. The Via Dolorosa, as I understand it, because I have not been to Jerusalem to experience it myself, but my good friend Katarina Whitley, who has been there many times, describes Jerusalem as a hilly town with very narrow streets, and one of those streets is the Via Dolorosa. And here again, we don't know whether this is factual or anecdotal, because there's no direct recording, no pictures or anything. But Jesus made his spent the final days of his life there. And I can see it in my mind's eye as similar to some of the streets that I know in Florence. But I'm sure it didn't look like that.
Yeah.
But the stations are an accepted part of the spiritual parameters of the churches that I've been in, the Episcopal churches primarily. And of course, during Lent, from Ash Wednesday to Good Friday, at Holy Cross, we have on Sundays and on Fridays readings, and we walk the stations. We go through the church, and parishioners will be given a station. Like our rector might say, "Well, Ozzie, how about you reading the station 5?" And there's a Lenten meditation there. And I just volunteered in 1999, I think. It just hit me. I thought I will offer to do the stations.
Yeah.
And looking back on it, it was really an ill-advised offer, because as it turned out, I didn't have any experience with what we would call religious art. But anyway, I jumped in on this thing, and I guess my primary focus in that suite of woodcuts was to manipulate imagery so that parishioners would be provoked into establishing empathy with the works and with the suffering of Jesus.
Yeah. So the Stations of the Cross have been portrayed by many artists throughout history, and yours is there, part of that record. 14 stations. Now, in the history of the church, pilgrims would go to Jerusalem and walk the Via Dolorosa.
Exactly.
And stop at the stations and have a meditation or a prayer. And so you're bringing Jerusalem into the Church of the Holy Cross. People will actually go around the stations and pause. And I know in the Catholic Church there are prayers and Bible readings that go along with each station. You mentioned Katharina Whitley, and you and she collaborated on a book. So we can get this second image up here, Walking the Way of Sorrows, and this is your woodcuts are reproduced
the
in here.
woodcuts are there, and then for each station, Katharina, it's really interesting. Her writing, for the most part, is about women of the Bible. And she mentioned this yesterday in the presentation, that she was suddenly looking at an image of a man and saying, well, I don't know how a man speaks, how he talks. But she went around to each station and picked, we'll call it a character, in each of the stations. In the first one, it's a guard holding a long spear. And that's when Pilate is condemning Jesus. And she puts herself in the soldier's shoes. What is he thinking at that moment, watching this condemnation? And then, as Katharina so beautifully wrote it, he dared look into Jesus's eyes. And when he did, he felt just an enormous change. I mean, guilt, shame, following orders all of a sudden kind of lost its flavor.
Yeah.
And so I showed her the stations about a third of the way through, and she pitched back to me the idea of us collaborating on this little book, Linton book.
Mm-hmm.
And we've gone around to back in the day, the thing came out in 2001, so 2002 through about 2006. I packed all this stuff, all the woodcuts, all the prints in my car, and we would drive. We went to St. Paul's Church in Winston-Salem. We went to the cathedral in Asheville. We went to Statesville. We made the rounds of several churches, doing a little dog and pony show about the Stations of the Cross. Now, we were talking about this a little earlier, and I think it's essential to what I wanted to do in those works. I mentioned that they're not necessarily realistic. They're not descriptive in terms of emphasis. I borrowed that little quote from Writers Know It, from writing. Show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. Telling a story, in many ways, excludes the reader from becoming part of the story. When you show the story, you, the reader, is engaged with the dialogue from one of the characters, and we begin to be sucked into the book because of what is shown in the writing.
Yeah.
And I was wanting to do that in these prints, in these woodcuts. The one, Station 12, I think, Jesus is nailed to the cross. That I wanted to make that print as ugly as I could make it. I wanted to depict, there are three men in there, and I wanted to try to make them look as cruel as I possibly could. And I have one little woman in the background, obviously contrasting with this kind of anger. And I would want to think that that's showing what that must have been like.
Right.
I don't know that you picked up on this yesterday, but after they were installed, the first Sunday after they were installed, after the service, we all went into the parish hall for coffee, This little lady came up to me and said, "Oh, I want to thank you for doing the stations. But they would have been so much prettier if you'd used color." And I said, "Well, I don't think of the last days of Jesus as a particularly pretty time.
Right.
Do you?"
No.
And she said, "Oh, no, I'm sorry. Black and white, the starkness. Woodcut, that's why I
That
chose
was the perfect
woodcut.
media.
Yeah,
medium
it is.
For that, right?
It's a very dramatic, very direct way of it's the oldest method of printmaking. Let's use that word, not printing. Mm-hmm. Printmaking is, there are four basic types of printmaking. You've got the woodcut, which is printing from a raised surface. Like I told the people yesterday, when you were booked in the jail and you had
Right.
to do this, you left a relief.
The fingerprint, yeah.
A raised print. Intaglio printing, it would be metal engraving or etching. And then planographic would be lithography. And you're getting into more modern times with these. As you move through the four, you're moving from ancient. The Chinese did woodcuts.
Yeah.
Back before Christ. right on up to screen printing, which is T-shirts and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I was taken by your description of how you produce a print like this. This is one of the stations. This is
The second,
Christ carrying the cross.
second station, yeah.
Let's move to the next image. But one of the things that, because you were describing how a woodcut is made, so you're carving out of a piece of wood everything that is white,
That's right.
and everything that is black stays in relief. So it's a really time-consuming and physical process. And you
It
were
is.
describing about the process of actually carving out that wood, and it's just amazing to me how you have to be able to see in reverse almost.
Well, you have to put it on the block in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. And as I was showing the people yesterday, it's kind of a simple procedure. After I worked up a kind of a master sketch, the size of the print, 14 by 17, I put a piece of tracing paper on and just rough in the basic components of the picture, then turn it over so it's backward.
Mm-hmm.
Lay it on a fresh block of wood, put a piece of carbon paper underneath it, and just enough of pressure to register the marks on the wood. And then you start, thinking backwards.
Yeah. This is the
soldier.
This is a soldier that captivated Katerina.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, and so you said you wanted to show the story. It's exactly what you did. You showed that to Katerina, and she put herself into the mind of that soldier. And
Yeah, the other
became
thing-
involved in the scene.
The other thing that I did in here, and I'll make a confession, I've been making art for 65 years, a lot of drawing. Hands are the hardest thing for me to draw. I don't know why, but they are. I decided, and this was almost suicidal, that one of the things I would use to dramatize this suite of prints was to exaggerate the hands. So hands become a very expressive part of almost every one of the prints. And I've got a little cat down there.
I see that cat.
I've got 4 animals in my prints, and people say, "Oh, where did the animals come from? Are you an animal person?" And I said, "No, I really have them in there for other reasons, mostly composition and to set a contrast. If you want to make something really look angry, place it against something that's pleasant. I mean, the contrast."
Like the woman in the background of the crucifixion.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, you really took on a challenge if you were highlighting the one thing that creates you the most difficulty.
Yeah, it was, and it became, strangely enough, easier to do when you make them time and a half or 2 times the size.
Let's look at the next image, which is Jesus taking up his cross, and this is what's on the front of the book.
Right,
But
the detail.
It's reversed, right?
It is on the book.
Is there a reason for that?
No.
Okay.
I don't think there is.
I wondered about that. Let's look at this next image now. And one of the things that struck me are these 2 very evocative images of Jesus with his mother. This one before his death, and then the next one afterwards. But you were saying that Katerina's work is with women in the Bible, but I think that there are 4 stations that feature women. 2 with Mary.
Yeah.
Veronica wiping the
face of Jesus.
And
the women of Jerusalem.
The women of Jerusalem, yeah.
And then in the arms of his mother,
right.
The 13th station.
Yeah. So that's really impressive that women play such a prominent role in these stations. This one, it just catches the affliction in Mary's face and the, I don't know how to describe the expression of Jesus in this one.
Well, let me, if I may, return to Mary for just a moment.
The one before this?
No,
Or
no,
the-
this one.
This one, yeah. To Mary, to Mary's expression. Yeah.
From Jesus to Mary.
Right.
When I was trying to develop a sketch for this, I was kind of at a loss to how to handle Mary. And so I asked my wife, Susie, who was a theater major back in the day. I said, how about doing me a favor? We were upstairs. I said, how about going down about 2 steps, 3 steps, turn and imagine at that time that you have just learned tragic news. What would you do? And without any hesitancy, she walked 2 steps, turned, and threw her hand up against her face, long enough for me to make a sketch of it. But you know, I'm working blind in a way. I'm having to trust serendipity, or is that another way of saying that maybe I'm getting a little help here that I'm not aware of?
Well, it certainly worked with this image,
Yeah.
right? And that was a genius way of coming up with how to handle Mary.
Needed all the help I could get.
Well, let's look, since we've got this one of Mary, let's look at the next one as well. There, throughout the art history, there are many images of Mary holding the broken, dead body of
Yeah.
Jesus. We think of Michelangelo's Pietà.
Pietà, yeah.
And this is what this is, right? This is
Yeah, it is.
This is your Pietà.
It's a very tragic image. And what was very difficult, well, several things were, but one of them was how to depict the dead Jesus. You know, I'm using colors, so it all had to be black and white. How to rob that face of life. And I made several preliminary woodcut sketches to try to get that feeling, because I wanted the contrast between his face and her face. And the thorn motif was another thing I used in here to try to unify 14 stations. That was the biggest challenge I had, was how to do 14 different prints that work as one. It's like a book with chapters, you know, or a symphony with movements. It has to work as a whole. And so I got so carried away with the thorns, especially in this one, that almost every other inch of the print is a thorn, a prickly, a harsh, kind of angry shape.
I see that. Well, I tell you, it's beautifully done. It's remarkable work. I thank you for sharing it with the world.
Well,
I wish we had time to go through each one of the stations, but unfortunately we're.
well,
out of time.
let your viewers take a trip to Valley Crucis.
There you go.
The church is always open.
All right. Well, thank you again for
Well,
this
it's
wonderful
my pleasure
gift
to
to the
be
world.
here. Thank
All
you, Ozzie.
Thank you, Noise. Well, that's it for Religion and Life for this week. I hope you'll join us again next week on App TV as we continue to explore the relationship between religion, culture, and society. Till then, this is Ozzie Ostwald.